Good morning, everyone. Today on Global News Hour, we will be discussing a recap of the Cold War. We will be interviewing very important people, including soldiers and German natives. This period of tension and hostility occurred from 1945 to 1991. It was between the United States of America and the Soviet Union. Before we delve into this subject, here's a bit of background information on the war's origins. Disagreements began when Stalin attempted to take control of Eastern European nations and spread communism. The capitalist and democratic nations of Great Britain and America believed the countries should choose their own governments. At the Yalta Conference, which occurred during World War II, Stalin agreed to hold free elections for the Eastern nations in question. However, he dishonored his word and never held the elections. Not wanting to go to war, the U.S. and Great Britain allowed the Soviets to take Eastern Bloc nations and divided post-war Germany into 4 Allied zones of occupation. A separate division of Berlin was made as well. Now let's look back to the divided city of Berlin, where Maddie will tell us more about the Berlin blockade and its repercussions.
Thanks, Anna. I'm here in Berlin, Germany, where tensions are rising. Recently, in June 1948, there was a blockade set up here to block West Berlin from receiving any aid. Additionally, the United States wanted to assist the citizens of Berlin, so the Berlin airlift occurred for 11 months and involved the Allies dropping aid on the city of Berlin at a rate of 1 per minute. This was in order to counteract the blockade. Also, with ideas such as the Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan, these plans both aided nations that took the side of the United States and helped to contain communism. Now, I have a German citizen here named Thomas Deutsch, who will talk with us about the new Berlin Wall that was installed last night. Hello, Thomas. How are you feeling today?
Not very good at all. I'm very fearful that I may never see my family again. I was returning home from work yesterday to discover that the wall has been put into place, separating East and West Berlin. There was no crossing of the wall. My family is on the other side of that wall.
Why do you imagine that this wall was put into place?
It was because Stalin is trying to control capitalism in East Berlin. They don't want the people living in West Berlin to see the benefits of capitalism, so they have separated us with this bloody wall.
We are very sorry for your situation, Mr. Deutsch.
Thomas Deutsch.
Indeed, we are so sorry, and we hope that you can find your family soon. Now we're going to take this back to the studio with Anna.
And we're back, continuing on with the Cold War. One major conflict during this time was the Cuban Missile Crisis. In 1962, Cuba, with its new communist leader Fidel Castro, provided a launch base for USSR intercontinental missiles. This alarmed the U.S. and our president at that time, John F. Kennedy. Kennedy requested the removal of the missiles, which was denied by then-leader of the Soviet Union, Khrushchev. After 8 days of back and forth, both leaders agreed on the removal of the American blockade around Cuba and the dismantling of Soviet missiles in Cuba. This conflict helped set up a permanent hotline between the White House and the Kremlin. To learn more about the other 2 major conflicts during the Cold War, I'm going to toss it over to Maddie.
Thanks, Anna. There were 2 conflicts during the Cold War that were very similar and influential. These conflicts can best be described as proxy wars, or wars where 2 opponents are not directly fighting with each other through an official war, but are still conflicting with one another. The first proxy war, the Vietnam War, was fought from 1954 to 1975, and the second was the Afghanistan War, fought from 1979 to 1989. Both of these wars included civil wars regarding the spread of communism. First, the Vietnam War. At an international conference in 1954, it was decided to temporarily divide Vietnam. Ho Chi Minh's communist forces were in charge of the North and the South. Vietnam was ruled by a non-communist Ngo Dinh Diem, who was supported by the United States. Next, democratic elections were going to be held to reunify Vietnam, but Diem backed out for fear of losing his control and having communism take over. This resulted in military involvement from the United States and the Soviet Union. The Soviets and China aided the North, and the United States aided the South Vietnam. In the end, the United States was not successful in containing communism, and Ho Chi Minh was seen as a hero. Now, we will talk with a Soviet soldier regarding the Afghanistan War. Thanks for agreeing to chat with us today, Ivan Present. How are you?
I'm feeling so-so. We did just help the Vietnamese and spread our communism there, but not so much in Afghanistan.
Well, it's too bad that you feel this way, but can you explain to us some aspects of the war in Afghanistan?
Of course. I know for a fact that before the war, Afghanistan had been suffering many years of civil war. So in 1979, us communists decided to take over and set up a communist government. We also sent in troops to aid the communists and support them financially. However, many Afghans were against us and our laws because they were against the Muslim religion. It didn't help when the United States decided to come and support the anti-communists either.
So, is it safe to assume that this war was a failure for the Soviets?
Unfortunately. So, we are not used to the climate and terrain. Also, the Afghans had a much better motive for fighting for their homeland and religion. So eventually we withdrew our troops. It was really very embarrassing.
Thanks so much, Mr. Harrison. Now back to Anna to wrap things up.
Many thanks to Maddie and Mr. Harrison for his participation. To close today's broadcast, I'll be sharing news of the USSR's last leader, Mikhail Gorbachev. Gorbachev led from 1985 to 1991, and his main goal was to end the Cold War. First, he signed the arms control treaties with President Reagan and pulled Soviet troops out of Afghanistan. Then he implemented the policies of Glasnost and Perestroika. Glasnost gave Soviet citizens more political freedoms, ended censorship, and encouraged public discussion of government issues. Perestroika created free market reforms and allowed limited private enterprise. These freedoms led to food and supply shortages. Then in 1989, East and West Berlin citizens joined together and tore down the Berlin Wall. And Germany reunited as a whole nation in 1990. And although Gorbachev resigned as premier in 1991, the fall of Berlin Wall is often regarded as the symbolic end of the Soviet Union and the Cold War. That's all for tonight. Thank you for choosing Global News Network for all your video projects. Good night.